Hi everyone and welcome to this Fantasy Art Friday video. This week I wanted to attempt a lava phoenix. I recently worked on the lava dragon and the lava giant and I found the process for creating them super fun, trying to create the glowing lava. I imagined for this one I really wanted to focus on the wings and make them stand out in front of a comic panel, and then maybe have a really cool environment with a volcano. So as you can see, while I was working on the sketch, I tried to lay out the phoenix quite centralized in the panel. I tried to have the wings outspread and almost symmetrical, placing lots of rocks and all intricate details that I knew I was going to end up taking so much time with the outlines. And for the outlines, I made sure to use my Copic Multiliner SP 0.03mm. As a lot of you know, I love to spend time on the outlines, making sure they're as smooth as possible. And I don't think some of these details would have been possible without this pen, because some of the rocks towards the centre of this phoenix's body are tiny. I didn't realise that until I got to the outlining. Once the outlines were completed and I added a comic panel in the background, it was then time for the colouring. And for the colouring of this drawing, I used Copic Markers along with some Prismacolor pencils to add some details on top. So starting off with the phoenix's face, I used a mixture of the cool grey markers ranging between 1, 3, 5 and 7 to add layers of shading, adding the darkest shading to the undersides of some of the volcanic rocks. To show where some of the details are overlapping, I then brought out my black marker as well and blended that with the cool greys. I also didn't want to lose any of these details amongst that dark shading, so I started adding some highlights around the outer edges with a mixture of my Uni-Ball Signo Broad white ink pen and my white Prismacolor pencil. I wanted to create the effect of glowing lava between all the rocks, and so for the colouring of this I used cadmium red, and then to add some even brighter colouring to the phoenix's eye and mouth, I used a honey marker, making sure to add some bright highlights to its eye as well. For its body, I wanted to create the effect of volcanic rocks being separated by some glowing lava at the centre. And I have a specific process for creating this that I've used in a few previous drawings and I love using it. So I start off by adding shading to the rocks first with the cool grey 7 marker, adding shading to each individual rock across its body, and then adding highlights to each one with a mixture of the white Prismacolor pencil and the highlighter pen. This process takes a long time. I didn't anticipate how tiny I made some of those rocks. And once that layer was completed, I then added cadmium red to the centre to show where the lava is flowing in between. And then to add the shading over the top of that, I blended between a black marker and cool grey 7, 5 and 3, moving inwards towards the centre, leaving no shading at the centre, so that's the glowing spot. And it creates this really cool glowing effect that I've really loved using in some of these drawings. For the volcanic rock tail feathers, legs and feet, I wanted to use the same colouring process that I used for the previous rocks in the drawing, so using a mixture of the cool grey markers and then also using a black marker to show where some of the layers are overlapping, also then adding the highlights with the highlighter pen and the Prismacolor pencil, but not just adding highlights for the sake of it, also using the highlighter pen to add some scratchy effects to some of the rock surfaces, and just generally adding more texture to them. Next up, it was time to work on the phoenix's wings, starting with the frames first and adding a base layer of shading to them with cool grey 5 and 7, and then I added a bunch of highlights. For the inner section of the wings, I wanted to work on the rocks first, so I added shading to them with cool grey 3, 5 and 7, and then I added individual highlights with the Prismacolor pencil and the highlighter pen. And much like the phoenix's body, this took a long time as well. For the bright colouring in between all these rocks, I started with cadmium red, blending outwards to an orange marker, and then finally outwards to a honey marker. Then to develop this colouring, I added some Prismacolor pencils over the top, those being Spanish orange and poppy red, along with the white Prismacolor pencil and the highlighter pen. After this, I felt like the wings looked a little bit flat, so I added some shading underneath the frames, starting with a black marker and then blending outwards with cool grey 7, 5 and 3, in that order. I actually used the same colouring process for the lava flowing from its tail, but without the cadmium red and orange markers, just adding a base layer of colour with the honey marker and then adding all the details over the top with the Prismacolor pencils and the highlighter pen. With the phoenix completed, it was then time for the background, starting off with the volcano first, and my process for creating the effects of the volcano, I start off with a black marker, blending between that and the cool greys. Then I start adding the bright colouring on top with the cadmium red, the orange and the honey markers, along with the bright colouring of the Prismacolor pencils, then blending some highlights over the top with the white Prismacolor pencil and the highlighter pen, and just fading those details down the volcano. Also then adding a dark sky in the background with the cool grey 5, and then blending some smoke effects with my 6B pencil along with a blending stick and the small eraser to add some highlights to the smoke. Also adding some layers of smoke in the background as well. I added a couple of layers of shading with cool grey 3 and 1 towards the lower part of this drawing, and then I continued adding lots of smoke effects around here as well, fading upward towards the volcano. Then, for the final details of this drawing, I added a bunch of lines sweeping right across the page to create these environment effects, having all these sparks flying across the scene. And then I also added some bright highlights around the phoenix itself to make it stand out from that background. And after that, this drawing was completed. Overall, it took about 7.5 hours to complete, and it was super fun to work on another lava creature. These ones are so fun to work on. I love creating the effect of the glowing lava amongst all the volcanic rocks, and I would love to work on more. Please let me know what you think of this drawing, and also let me know any suggestions you have for future drawing videos. Also, if you want to see more drawings like this, then make sure you're subscribed, and any likes or shares on this video, they really mean a lot to me. If you'd like to follow my progress and see progress photos before I post these videos, then make sure to check out the links in the description box below to check out my Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. And once again, thank you so much for watching this, and thank you so much for the support. I really appreciate it. I hope you're having an awesome day, and I'll see you all soon.